I'd be remiss to overlook the influence of $20 million invested in the Young Turks from Jeffrey Katzenberg's media conglomerate that has its fingers in the private healthcare industry. In 2019, Katzenberg developed a smartphone app to help healthcare giants with mobile marketing.
So, following the 2016 election, there was a large $20 million investment into the Young Turks, and this was really the investment that grabbed a lot of headlines. There was a lot of talk about one of the investors, Jeffrey Katzenberg. Could you please just talk about this investment and also give us some detail on who some of the key players were in this investment?
Yeah, sure. Katzenberg was the big name on the deal, and for a good reason. He's a huge establishment donor, particularly to Hillary Clinton in 2016. He gave the Victory Fund, the Victory Fund, her actual campaign, all the related PACs that she had, of which there were many. He gave them millions. DreamWorks as a company, their employees donated over $400,000 to establishment Democrats, such as Clinton got over 30 grand, Chuck Schumer got over 21 grand, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she got over 21 grand from DreamWorks. Kamala Harris got about 16 grand. So, Bernie Sanders got like $1,000, and they were all from like really tiny donations from low-level staff. Almost all the executives and higher ups all went with Clinton, even during the primaries. And I'm speaking of DreamWorks here, of which Jeffrey Katzenberg is the CEO. And so it was kind of unsettling to see, such a huge Hillary Clinton mega donor, who we know. I mean, nobody is going to sit here and try to tell you that Hillary Clinton is a progressive, and if they do, they're just lying to you. I mean, there's really no other way to put that, or they're trying to fool you. So it was kind of disheartening to see a progressive outlet such as the Young Turks take so much money, with the man running point for it, being Jeffrey Katzenberg, and such a massive Hillary establishment donor. It just sent all the wrong signals and all the wrong messages. But the thing is that while Katzenberg was getting most of the press time, most of the shine for that deal, is that he wasn't even the main partner on the deal. He was just the big name, right? There were several other companies or firms that got in on the action with DreamWorks and Katzenberg whenever he came in.
So just to run through some of the other names that were involved in this, who is Sean Colo?
All right, so Sean Colo is actually joined the board of the Young Turks in the Katzenberg deal. See, Katzenberg didn't join the board, right? He just, he was a partner, but the primary investor was an investment firm called 3L Capital, and Colo is the founder of that. Now, Colo got his start as a venture capitalist who started something called the Leaf Group, which is a VC firm, a venture capital firm that he started in the earlier 2000s. About 2006 is when he started that. But he started that with $100 million investment from Goldman Sachs. Oh man! So he took $100 million from Goldman Sachs, made himself an investment firm, made a whole bunch of money, and then used that money to buy into the Young Turks and get himself a seat on the board. I try to be judicious with, sharing social media stuff like that as far as the people that I'm reporting on, because I don't want people to go harass them or not. I found on one of his social media pages, I just found it interesting because I'm trying to do my due diligence during the course of researching the story. He's taking a picture of his significant other with Senator Chuck Schumer and saying, the caption being, our favorite senator, right? So that's definitely good news if you're a progressive outlet, right? Getting, a Chuck Schumer fanboy on your board sounds like a good idea. It was just, Colo is he's the big board seat that, and you've noticed that at least one person has joined the board every time they get an investment. So the number of voices at the senior level, they keep increasing, right? So that's where we're at now. And any time that you see, contradictory financial influence coming into an institution, and in this case, the Young Turks, it makes you wonder, is there a co-optation in progress, or, what's happening? So I mean, it definitely raised some eyebrows, and for good reason. You know, people had a right to be skeptical about this.
Along those lines, have you noticed anything that significantly has changed since this $20 million investment?
It wasn't an immediate thing, I don't think. I do know that at first when Uyghur came out and decided that he was going to, because he was catching a lot of flack for taking the Katzenberg money. And he came out and he made a series of videos, or at least one major video in particular, that basically he was saying that, hey, look, you know, basically the point he was trying to make was that money corrupts politicians, but it doesn't corrupt media, or, you know, basically money is such a corrupting force in everything except for the Young Turks, right?
Of course.
For him to say that there is no chance of the money coming from these sources to influence the Young Turks, like that was just a slap in the face of everybody that had stuck with him so far. Because I mean, that's obviously not true. If money is a corrupting force in politics, then of course it could be a corrupting force in media. And just to say that it's exclusive to one but not the other, or saying that, oh, well, CNN and Fox and all these are bad because they do X, but we can do X and it not affect us, it just didn't make any sense. You have seen, you know, instances where, you know, they've pushed for Bernie, sure, okay. They've got this infatuation with Warren that I'll never understand, given her history, given her background, and they've got this disdain for Tulsi Gabbard, which, you know, I mean, let's just face it, Warren, there's no way Warren is more progressive than Gabbard. I mean, if you're looking at this objectively, but I mean, you want to make the case for Bernie, fine, but nobody's going to argue with you on that. If you were truly the home for progressives, you would be pushing for a progressive candidate. And even though they have thrown some support behind Bernie, his primary challenger, at least in my opinion, on the far left, is Elizabeth Warren. So whenever the Young Turks go on and they, you know, try to put Warren and Bernie basically on the same ticket, it's not helpful to Bernie Sanders' cause from that. And in fact, it's basically driving a wedge further between the same sect of voters that Sanders needs to get ahead.
I just want to make sure that we cover all of the names and individuals and companies involved in this 2017 deal. So could you please give us a little bit of insight into who Alan Patrikoff is and what Graycroft is?
Sure, absolutely. So Graycroft is an investment firm. They are very large and very influential. They have been around for a very long time. Their founder, Alan Patrikoff, has also been around and thrown his money around significantly for a very long time as well. When Bill Clinton was president, he was staying the night at the White House as a visitor, with the Clintons. So he's very close to that family. He was Hillary Clinton's national finance director for both her 2008 and her 2016 runs. And she also, or his firm, Graycroft, also handles $1.25 million of Senator Dianne Feinstein's money. So he even made it into Epstein's Black Book, if you can look that up. So, I mean, he's a very connected man. Graycroft employees donated $68,000 to political campaigns that cycle, the vast majority of it going to Hillary Clinton. Patrikoff himself donated $63,000 to Hillary and the PACs that support her. In both of those cases, Bernie Sanders got absolutely zero. So that lets you know that's at least three people that have joined that board, or at least three of the people that were investors in that $20 million deal. They were not Bernie Sanders fans. They were definitely pro-Clinton, and it wasn't just in the general. They were definitely pro-Clinton during the primaries, which is important to note because one might even be able to excuse them for being so pro-Clinton during the general when their only other option was Trump. Maybe I won't, but somebody else.
Yeah.
So, that being said, during the primaries, Bernie Sanders needed all of the attention and support that he could get. And at the highest levels of the Young Turks, he wasn't getting it. Like, they could have thrown that money behind a number of causes that would have benefited the Sanders campaign during their most important time. I know I understand that, Patrikoff and Katzenberg and Kolo, they were not technically on that board yet, right, during this stage, but they were never, ever, going to help Sanders before they joined the Young Turks. And, even now, I sincerely doubt, I haven't done any follow-up as to what they're investing in or the politicians they're investing in now. But I would assume, I'm going to take a safe bet and say that they're not supporting Sanders. I know for a fact Katzenberg has donated to almost every establishment candidate that's not Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard. I have done some follow-up on that. He donated Biden, Buttigieg, Warren even, and Kamala Harris. So it's just kind of there's a mixed signal at the very least being sent whenever TYT takes this deal and the people that they take the deal from. It just makes no sense, and it makes you question at the highest levels of their organization, are they putting their money where their mouth is?
So one other person I wanted to ask about is Deanna Brown. Could you please detail who Deanna Brown is?
Yeah, she came over in December of 2016. It was right about 4 months after the investment from Katzenberg and others. Is particularly Graycroft, because Graycroft is going to play a bit of a role in the story of Deanna Brown, at least in the peripheral. So Deanna Brown, she came to TYT in a newly created position, a president position. They hadn't had one before, but they created one just for her. She had been the vice president of Yahoo and the president of Scripps Network before, and that's just to name a few. Her LinkedIn is like a mile long as far as her past references and past resume of all the media companies that she has worked for at the executive and highest levels. But one of those companies was Lorne Michaels Broadway Video. They hired Brown in April of 2017 to do a stealth project. It's just basically a project that they keep so far under wraps nobody really knows about, called Sanctuary, which is some kind of weird astrology / social media app that's in development. Maybe it's defunct now, because it's been in development for so long, nothing's ever come of it. But the reason I bring that up is because the primary investor in that sanctuary business model was Graycroft. So, after Graycroft invests into the Young Turks, 4 months after that, Deanna Brown joins their ranks as president. She has since left to the Young Turks in 2018, but it's just funny how things work out.
I also think this is kind of funny when we look at, the coverage of Russiagate by TYT. Obviously, TYT has embraced Russiagate talking points.
That actually fits in perfectly with the question that you asked me previously about, has their content changed or has the message changed since they took the money? That's a huge red flag, right? The Russiagate stuff, the third party voters going on and saying, hey, vote for Hillary, don't vote for, basically a vote for not Hillary was a vote for Trump. That's the most, ridiculous, but that's the argument that establishment types use on you to disparage third parties. The Russiagate talking point is no different. That is a straight, legitimate establishment talking point that has been going around ever since Trump won that election. And even sometime before, it feels like a premeditated narrative that has been instilled in all of us to believe that everything that we don't like is a Russian bot, right? You've seen the meme for that, I'm sure. So yeah, that's a huge red flag for me.
You, of course, were with the Young Turks for a long time. You're part of their network. And to some degree, I think that they have also pushed Russiagate a little bit. And in other ways, well, yeah, a bit. So, and also I know Emma has been really outspoken against Tulsi Gabbard. So, it just seems like there's also, this sort of MSNBC influence happening in the Young Turks. And I just thought, I thought I'd ask you if you had any kind of take on that or just any kind of insight you might be able to provide.
All I can tell you is that when I started doing this show called Aggressive Progressives, because the main show took a editorial turn right? So it was after the primary, after they decided Bernie wasn't viable anymore. They went full speed, 100% Hillary, and they had a segment called Loser Donald. So they would bash Donald Trump, and it just so that was the impetus for Steve O and I, who was the COO of the company, to start a show called Aggressive Progressives as kind of a counter narrative to the way the editorial direction of the main show. And I thought it would be good. We'd be complimentary, right? So we would point out, everybody has blind spots or whatever. Here's what we think. Here's what they. And I thought it would be a good thing. And then I thought that our reporting would, would expose things, and people would see it and go, "Oh, I didn't know this," and it would change how they did what they were doing. That didn't happen. It turns out that my effort to shine a light on contrary narratives of Russiagate was not. It was it just created not a good environment. It wasn't welcomed, and I get that. I understand. And so that's all I can say is that I was hoping that my reporting. So do you know anyone who won an award doing their reporting on Russiagate? I don't know anybody besides Aaron Mate, and we had Aaron Mate on our show constantly, and we would bring him on. I bring him on Aggressive Progressives when I was in the Young Turk studio. I bring him on this show, and we would debunk all the bullshit of Russiagate, and it wasn't hard to do. And so I just it's weird. We got it right, 100% right.
And I think you've been
got it right, 100% right, and I thought that would be more appreciated. That's all I was looking for, and it wasn't. So that's all I can tell you now. The way their editorial direction. I mean, I can't speak to that. I don't know why. I can't tell you why they've taken the editorial direction they've taken or why they do what they do. That's up to. I mean, you watch it and make your own decisions. But I was real proud of the work we did at Aggressive Progressives. We debunked Russiagate on a weekly basis. We debunked the poor Venezuela coverage. We debunked the gas attacks in Syria. We were way ahead of everybody on all this stuff. And I did a lot of it in the TYT newsroom on Aggressive Progressives. And again, Aaron Mate won an award for that kind of reporting. Of course, they can't give an award to a jagoff comedian who says fuck every other sentence. So they gave it to Aaron Mate because he had the imprimatur of The Nation magazine. But again, like I said, Aaron Mate is such a generous guy and such a solid dude that he said he shares that award with our show. So
awesome.
I'm going to accept it. How about that? I'm going to go ahead and accept that. So here we were doing award-winning journalism on stuff like Venezuela, stuff like Russiagate, and stuff like Julian Assange, and debunking everybody in the mainstream news media. And so I'm really proud of the work we did there. And it was disheartening to me. I thought that if I kept doing good work and I kept showing, the debunking of Russiagate, that eventually everybody would catch on. That didn't happen. It was heartbreaking for me. And that's all I can tell you.
Anna Kasparian brands herself as a progressive and even a socialist while participating directly in NATO propaganda operations. Last year, Kasparian beamed with pride as she interviewed Madeleine Albright at the Munich Security Conference, a NATO summit funded by Western governments, multinational corporations, and the arms industry. At the same gathering of international militarists, she argued to a US general that Trump was not hard enough on Russia and suggested that he's controlled by Putin.
Don't you think there are too many coincidences when it comes to Donald Trump and Russia? And look, I'm not some Russia fearmonger, but he questions the legitimacy of NATO. He questions whether or not it was really that big of a deal for Russia to annex Crimea. He was very reluctant to implement those sanctions. He is very complimentary to Vladimir Putin. I mean, it's just his actions really do speak volumes.
Kasparian also denigrated leftists who dared to question the avalanche of anti-China propaganda, demanding that they be honest and just accept State Department talking points locked, stock, and barrel.
But I also have an issue with some people on the left who aren't honest about the actual abuses that take place in China, right? And the abuses that take place in Hong Kong now, Taiwan. I think the Uyghur Muslims and how they're being sent to these camps.
No surprise, Kasparian had little interest in reporting on the persecution of Julian Assange. When his extradition trial kicked off, her viewers had to pressure her to even cover it at all.
Kimber Maddox says, free Assange, he's being tortured. You have more subscribers than any other progressive media outlet. Please cover his court hearings. I promise you we'll look into that.
The most consequential trial of the century isn't even on the radar of the corporate NATO propagandist Anna Kasparian. Cenk Uygur also trashed Jimmy Dore, his former colleague at the Young Turks. Maybe it was inevitable that Cenk would lash out at Jimmy. For the past 4 years, Cenk has shamelessly promoted Russiagate, claiming an undeniable Trump-Russia connection and whipping up Cold War hysteria.
So I think that there clearly is collusion based on the publicly available evidence. I think the Russians during the election, did they interfere, quote unquote interfere? Yes. Did they do the fake news? Yes. Did they buy those troll farms, do tweets? Yes. But after the election, Putin pulls them aside and says, you know, we did all that money laundering together. We just turned that in and you're in a world of trouble. You're going to go to prison. So here's what you're going to do for us. And then Trump proceeds to do just that.
Back in 2011, the future founder of the Justice Democrats was orgasming over the destruction of Libya.
Down goes Gaddafi. It appears down goes Gaddafi. Down goes Gaddafi. It appears down goes Gaddafi.
And when Neera Tanden, who proposed stealing Libya's oil to balance the budget, was recently selected as Biden's Office of Management and Budget Director, Uygur tweeted that he's rooting for her. And then there's the time that he declared his support for our guys in the CIA. It's no coincidence that the pundits who are circling the wagons around AOC and seething at a comedian for pushing for a Medicare for All floor vote are also a bunch of pseudo-left imperialists. They've positioned themselves as guard dogs and gatekeepers of the Democratic Party, a pro-war, pro-Wall Street political cartel that fights the authentic anti-imperialist left harder than it takes on right-wing Republicans. If there's any positive to take away, now we know who's part of the struggle to improve the lives of working people in this country and end wars abroad, and who's standing in the way.